So how do we get the fly from the rod to the fish? Obviously it's with a fly line, a leader, and tippet all working together to accomplish that. Fly lines nowadays come in so many different tapers, colors, even textures now. It can be kind of a little overwhelming and maybe a little confusing. But for a trip out here doing, all of your dry fly fishing, you're going to need pretty much just a floating line that is tapered on the front end to help turn over the fly. And there's many different manufacturers of fly lines. There's Scientific Anglers, Rio, Cortland, Orvis, but really you want to find a fly line that matches your rod as far as its action, and also that you can afford, of course. But fly lines, some people really like the new textured fly lines. The thinking behind that is that the fly line can go through the guides a little bit easier. It actually floats higher by putting less surface, having less contact with the water surface with it being textured. But there's textured fly lines now. Some fly lines now actually combine both texture and non-textured. But there's textured lines, smooth lines. I talked earlier about sometimes with my heavier weight rods, I do like to what we call overweight maybe my rod with my line. And so there are some lines out there like this one from Rio called the Rio Grande. Even though it says it's a 6 weight, it's actually more like a 7 weight line. And so this is one that I would put on my 6 weight if I know I'm just using that rod to cast big flies, maybe not very far, but I just want to cast short, but with, with a big fly. And that will help my rod bend and turn over that fly a little bit easier, and also maybe cast through the wind. But once again out here, if you want to get a new fly line for your rod, for the West, just a weight forward floating line is going to work. They come in different colors, brighter greens and yellows to more drab colors, olive and tans. To me, I don't think it makes much of a difference. If the fish can see your fly line, you're probably obviously doing something wrong. But that's kind of fly lines. And obviously attached to the fly line is a leader. And once again, there's lots of different manufacturers of different leaders. These are just two of them, Umpqua, Rio, Scientific Anglers, Orvis. For the leaders, I think you just need a nylon leader. I don't think you need to get a fluorocarbon leader. We'll talk about fluorocarbon in a little bit here when we talk about tippet. But for your leader, I just think a standard nylon tapered leader is just fine. You sell them in individual packs. They sell them in 3-packs. But if you want to buy, maybe a couple leaders to bring out with you, one thing that I've been doing for years and years is I just buy 9-foot 3X leaders and 7.5-foot 3X leaders. And the 3X, you'll commonly hear that, 3X, 4X, 5X. That just refers to what the end of the leader is as far as its diameter. So the higher the number, the smaller the diameter. The smaller the number, the bigger the diameter that the leader ends in. So I just like to get a 9-foot 3X leader, a 7.5-foot 3X leader. That way, if there's a leader on one of my reels, I don't have to guess, what size tippet or what size that leader is. I always know that it's a 3X leader. And then from there, I can either add on to it if I want to go smaller, if I'm fishing smaller dries, or I can cut it back and make it and go bigger if I'm casting bigger flies. Because that's really important, is that the whole system has to work, based on the size, based on the size of the flies that you're fishing. Otherwise, you'll find that the cast just isn't as smooth, and your presentation just isn't as smooth. So once again, I just buy 9-foot 3X leaders, 7.5-foot 3X leaders. And that way I've taken the guessing game out of it for myself, and that's where I like to start with my leaders. And then on to the leader, as we know, just so we're not having to, as we're cutting away at the leader, as we're tying on new flies or changing flies, eventually that leader is going to get so short that we have to replace the leader. That can get pretty expensive. So we always add tippet onto the end of our leader. And that's for a couple reasons. One, when we're changing flies, we're just cutting and eating away at that tippet. And then also if we break off a fish or we get a snag, we can break it off, where that knot is that connects the leader to the tippet. So that's another good reason why we always want to add on at least one piece of tippet, just to also have that breaking point when we need to break off a fly or when we get snagged. Now for tippet spools, if I had to come out here, I would really, you can get everything from, 0x to 7x and even bigger tippet or smaller tippet. But really out here, from my experience, I think, if you had to bring out 3 spools, I think a spool of 3x, a spool of 4x, and a spool of 5x is really going to cover pretty much most of the scenarios that you're going to encounter on the river. In addition to good old nylon, there's also now fluorocarbon. It's been around for a while, actually. Fluorocarbon has some benefits. One, it's stronger. 2, it does not refract light like nylon does when light hits it. So that's why it's also really beneficial to use. Some people say that it might sink a little bit. I don't think it really does. And so now, once again, to simplify things for myself, instead of having to buy both nylon and both fluorocarbon tippet spools, for many years now, I just buy fluorocarbon. I use that for my dry flies, for my nymphs, for my streamers. Once again, I just make it easy for myself, and that way I have confidence that it's strong, it's not going to break, so now I just buy all fluorocarbon, and once again, I think a spool of 3X, 4X, and 5X out here is going to cover a lot of the scenarios that you're going to encounter, with a few exceptions. So obviously your guide, who's going to be furnishing the rods and reels, he's also going to have the fly lines, the leaders, the tippet, even other tackle. But this is just general knowledge for you if you would like to pick up maybe a new fly line, some new leader, some new tippets when you come out west. To learn more about fly fishing out west, go to our website at yellowdogflyfishing.com.